Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Board of Appeals. My name is Frank O'Brien, and I will be acting as chair for this particular hearing. Joining me are my fellow board members, Nicholas Gray and Brian Hurley. The way that we will conduct this hearing is that I will introduce the application. I will note the contents of the record, and then I will invite the applicant, who this evening is represented by counsel attorney Ned Cochran. I will provide an opportunity for Attorney Cochran to present the case. I will then open it up to members of the audience who may wish to ask questions of the applicant. If you do so, I would ask that all questions be addressed through the board. Following that, we'll provide an opportunity for any person who wishes to express any opposition to the proposed application. This meeting is being recorded and is being conducted pursuant to the open meeting law, as well as the executive order issued by the governor, as well as provisions passed by the legislature allowing public bodies such as the Milton Board of Appeals to conduct these meetings remotely. We are using the Zoom platform. So in regards to the first hearing, this is on the application of the Roman Catholic Archbishop of Boston and Beth Israel Hospital in Milton, dated April 4th, 2022, on file with the Board of Appeals for the renewal of a special permit with respect to the terms of Section 3A7E and Section 3A7B of the Milton zoning bylaws. Milton Hospital and the Roman Catholic Archbishop of Boston request the board to renew the June 10th, 2019 special permit to authorize the hospital to continue to use the 60 parking spaces within the church parking lot at 350 Reedsdale Road. The first special permit renewal was granted on June 10, 2019, and is set to expire on August 13, 2022. The applicants are seeking to extend the term of the special permit for 3 additional years from August 13, 2022 to August 13, 2025. The property is located in a Residence C zoning district. All is set therein and set forth in the application and plans on file with the board, which are open to public inspection. In addition to the hearing notice, which I have just read, also included in the file are the application regarding the renewal of this special permit, an addendum to the application for the second, for the continuation of the special permit, drafted by Attorney Cochran, with additional correspondence between Attorney Cochran and the building inspector, as well as a notice regarding continuation of the hearing on an earlier set date for this hearing. So again, all of those documents are in the file and are open to public inspection. So with those preliminaries, I invite Attorney Ned Cochran to state his case. And welcome, Attorney Cochran. Welcome back to the Board of Appeals. It's good to see you as always.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Appreciate the opportunity to be back. I am joined by Paul Crawford, who is Director of Grounds and Facilities at the hospital. This is as you indicated, and as I indicated in the filings, this is an application for a second renewal of a special permit that was originally granted in August of 2018. It was granted after 2 nights of hearing with the board. The purpose of the permit is to authorize the hospital to lease 60 parking spaces within the St. Elizabeth Church parking lot for employee parking. And then the hospital runs a shuttle over from the church back and forth to the hospital. We think that it's been a very effective way to relieve some of the difficulties of parking on site, particularly for visitors and users of the hospital. Employees can park. It's actually it's an easier spot to get to. Many of the employees who park at this location come straight up Randolph Avenue from the south, park at St. Elizabeth Church, and then take the shuttle over to the hospital. It alleviates some of the volume of traffic that would otherwise be maybe coming in and out on Highland Street or other streets coming to and from the hospital for employees. The initial permit that was granted in 2018 authorized the parking as requested and limited the time of the operation of the shuttles sort of between 2 significant time frames, one between 6:45 a.m. And 9:15 a.m. and then 3:15 and 5:45 p.m. so that there was sort of 2.5 hour blocks or 3 hour blocks, morning and afternoon, when the shuttles would run relative to the timing of shifts at the hospital. During the second hearing, there was the police chief indicated at that time that there had been no issues with the first 1 year of operation. The church itself had indicated that there was no issue. And so the board extended that permit by 3 years and allowed the extension of minor extensions of the timing. So in the morning, the parking could start at 6:30 as opposed to 6:45, and in the evening, it could wrap up at 7 as opposed to 5:15. We're now on. We've actually the second extension. The first extension is actually expired. We actually filed this application in April, hoping that we'd have the ability to be before this board prior to the April 13 expiration. We were advised by Mr. Prondak that he would recognize the effectiveness of the permit through the process of this hearing, so that we wouldn't have to worry about that 2 or 3 week hiatus between the ending of the term of the hearing, of the permit and this hearing. And so we've had 3 years, we think, of very successful operation. We've had no complaints from neighbors, from the church, or from the police department itself. And based on that, we are requesting that the board renew this, agree to this application and renew this permit. We think it can be done without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantially derogating from the intent of the bylaw. As I said earlier, I think one of the benefits is that it keeps employee traffic away from the hospital, and so it limits volumes of traffic that might be coming in and out of the hospital and streets around the hospital for employee uses. And with that, I'll pause and open it to questions.
Thank you, Attorney Cochran. Let me open it up to members of the board at this particular point in time. Mr. Hurley or Mr. Gray, do you have any questions or comments at this point?
Just how has it been going the last 3 years? Maybe you said that, Ned, and it just was hard for me to hear you.
We think it's been going great. Been no issues, no concerns. In fact, at the last hearing, and we didn't follow up specifically with the direct abutter. There was one abutter who had raised a concern the first night of during the first hearing 4 years ago. He testified the following year that everything was fine. and we have had no other complaints or issues or concerns that have been raised to the attention of the hospital. We do know that folks in the area of the hospital, particularly on the latter streets, Stafford and Buckingham, and
Spafford.
Highland Street itself, are always concerned about traffic and cut-through traffic and traffic coming into the back door of the hospital. We think this one of the benefits of this parking arrangement is it alleviates some of that concern.
I don't have any further questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Mr. Hurley.
I don't really have any questions. I think it's a beneficial use of advantage to the community, and I fully understand it, and I fully intend to vote to grant the extension.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Mr. Cochran, I believe you mentioned that you had a gentleman from the hospital. I don't see that gentleman in the participant list.
Paul Crawford, he had been elevated to a panelist. I wonder if he fell off from a technological perspective. But
he's not here at all anymore. He's not even in the attendees list, so I don't know where he went.
Okay.
Okay, I know that he was there briefly. It may be that his connection failed, but he was there to be supportive of. If there's any particular questions that I wasn't able to answer, he'd be available to be helpful.
Okay. Well, why don't we see if there are any questions?
He's calling me on my cell. Hello? Okay, they're just so I've got him on my cell. He just said he got bumped off somehow, but I can relay to him any questions that additional questions you may have for him.
All right. Well, why don't we'll do a little workaround. Ms. Rich, are there any members of the public who have indicated a desire to be heard on this particular case?
No, there's not.
Okay. With that, and I don't have any additional questions or comments to make, and I don't believe that the members of the board do either. With that, I'm going to call this particular hearing to a close, and the board will now move into deliberations. And Mr. Hurley, I believe you indicated earlier that you're prepared to support this application.
I am. I think for all the reasons that Mr. Corcoran has outlined and highlighted for us, it's been I think a good beneficial thing for the town throughout. We all value having this hospital here in the town, and I appreciate the fact that it keeps the traffic off of the streets surrounding the hospital, and I think it's good for the neighbors, and I think it's good for the town. So I would be inclined to vote in favor of the requested extension.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Mr. Gray.
For all the reasons that Mr. Hurley said, I
Brian, I'm going to ask you to mute again.
It's funny, my wife always is asking me to mute. I don't know what that.
There we go.
can't fix that.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Now we can hear you.
I was saying that I support the application. I think for all the reasons that Mr. Corcoran and Mr. Hurley stated, it's a good situation for the town, and I'm sure it's a major help to the hospital as well, and help protect the residents of that neighborhood from additional traffic, including left turns from 28 Reedsdale Road into the hospital. So I will support the application.
I too will vote in favor of this application. I think it was well presented as always, and I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Hurley. This is good for the town. It's good for the neighborhood. It's operated flawlessly, and it has served a very good purpose in terms of reducing traffic congestion around the area of the hospital. So with that, all those in favor of granting the extension of the special permit, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Thank you. The vote is unanimous. Mr. Cochran, you are 1 for 3 so far, so congratulations.
Thank you very much.
By a raise of the hand, who would like to take this one on? Okay, Mr. Gray. Thank you, Nick. All right, let's move on to the next hearing, which is 221 Elliott Street. Let me just get set up here for a moment, if you don't mind.
Ned, do I need to promote Mary Noble?
No,
Or is she, okay, thank you.
thank you.
All right, Mr. Carker, is it just going to be you, or your client's going to be here as well?
It's just going to be me this evening. My clients were unable to attend tonight.
Okay. So why don't we do the preliminaries, and by the time the preliminaries are done, then we will be close to the 6 o'clock hour. So we're now going to open the 6 o'clock hearing for this evening. And this is upon the application of Kevin and Sandra Fleming of 221 Elliott Street. Their application is dated July 6, 2022. And they are seeking to build a 22.4 by 12.5 deck addition to the rear of their residence at the aforementioned 221 Elliott Street. The applicant's residence located in a Residence C zoning district, and the residence was built in approximately 1900 as a single family and is considered dimensionally pre-existing non-conforming. A plot plan dated January 27, 2022 shows that this addition would be built at a distance of 6 feet from the right side property line when 10 feet are normally required by section C61 of the Milton zoning bylaw. The applicants also request a finding from the board in the form of a special permit pursuant to section 4 non-conforming use of buildings and lands that this proposed change is not more detrimental to the neighborhood than what currently exists. All as therein set forth in said application with plans on file with the board and open the public inspection. Again, for the record, my name is Frank O'Brien. I'll be acting as chair for this particular hearing. Joining me are my fellow board members, Nick Gray and Brian Hurley. Included in the package for this particular hearing, in addition to the public notice, which I have just read, is the denial letter dated June 28th, 2022 from the Milton building inspector relative to this application, laying out the violation and the zoning board of appeals process. Also here is the application for the relief, as well as an addendum to the application for relief with several attachments, including a plot plan, again, dated January 27, 2022, an additional plan prepared by Gerald Driscoll, dated December 19, 2021, in 3 sheets showing the actual construction, maps online of the 221 Elliott Street neighborhood, as well as a letter of support from a direct abutter at 217 Elliott Street, Cheryl Delcato, dated May 1, 2022. All of these materials have been filed by attorney Ned Cochran, who is also representing the applicant. Before I turn it over to attorney Cochran for his initial presentation on this, let me ask Ms. Rich, Did additional materials come in on this case this afternoon?
I did.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I believe an additional letter in support was also filed.
It
Yes,
was. I sent
I
that.
forwarded an additional letter of support.
All right. With that, thank you, Ms. Rich. With that, Attorney Corcoran, please proceed.
Thank you. This is an application, we think, for really de minimis impact, but my clients, the Flemings, own the property at 221 Elliott Street. It's one of those properties that's part of a pre-existing non-conforming neighborhood, really. The property itself is non-conforming in that it is only 50 feet wide on the frontage. It's a fairly long, narrow lots. The houses that were built are fairly substantial along Elliott Street, and this is one of those that was built back in 1900 during the turn of the last century. As you can see from the plot plan that we filed, the rear right corner of the house is set only 6.5 feet from the next door property at 217 Elliott Street. There is actually an existing shed that sits between the house and essentially the property line. And the proposal is to add a second floor, a 2-story addition off the rear of the building within fully complying with the setbacks, but also a deck. And the deck would in order to be square off the back of the house, when you get to the back portion of the deck, that deck is only 6 feet off that side lot line. It encroaches sort of 6 inches closer to the existing side lot line. The next door neighbor to the right at 217, Cheryl Delacono is her maiden name, and she owns the property. She and her husband own the property next door at 217. They submitted a letter of support. And today, Michael Hardiman, who owns the property on the other side at 225 Elliott Street, also submitted a letter of support, which I forwarded through through Crystal this afternoon. I think this is one of those cases that we see in Milton all the time. These old residency neighborhoods in particular, where there are legal non-conformancies, either from a setback perspective, front yard, side yard, rear yard, the lot itself, they are what they are. Houses that were built for another time need to be built today for new families with new needs. And in this case, given the fact that the 2 properties that are directly abutting this deck, there's only the properties on each side, 217 and 225, are the only 2 properties that would be effectively impacted by this this proposal are in support. I think that it's appropriate for the board to approve in this case. The last thing I would say is that the rear lot line is the MBTA trolley line. So there is no residential abutter to the rear. So with that, I would pause here and see if the board has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corcoran. So, Mr. Gray, any questions or comments?
Just one comment. Mr. Corcoran, I want to disclose to you that I just noticed that the abutters on the right side are clients of mine. The Bondars, they're supporting the application. As you say, this is the type of application that is often granted in Milton, and based on the facts so far, I'm disposed to grant the relief. Are you comfortable with me continuing?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
I just wanted to let you know, based on that, I, as you said, I mean, this is a common occurrence in the town where we've got many lots that were laid out prior to the implementation of zoning in 1938. And this is based on the facts that I've seen, one where we've routinely granted relief in the past. So I think you presented your application well. I don't really have any, you've gotten the assent of the abutters. I don't have any questions other than that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Mr. Hurley, any questions or comments?
I do not have any questions, and I agree with Mr. Gray. I mean, this has virtually no impact on the neighborhood and the neighbors who would be most affected. Both have voiced their support for the application, so I would intend to vote in favor of the grant of this requested special permit.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Ms. Rich, have any members of the public joined and indicated a desire to be heard on this particular application?
No, there's no one.
Okay. Hearing none and with no further comments by members of the board, I'm going to call to a close the evidence portion of this particular hearing and move forward to the deliberation. And I'll begin. I will agree with both of my colleagues that this is the type of application that this board has seen routinely over the years. I would agree with the applicant that the intrusion is fairly minor. I would also note that it is entirely toward the rear of the structure, hidden by the present building, and it is a deep lot. So it would be my intention to vote in favor of this application as well. Mr. Hurley or Mr. Gray, any additional comments you'd like to make at this time?
No.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, at this point, I would ask all those in favor of granting the proposed relief in the form of a variance of the provisions of section 6C1 and a special permit under the provisions of section 4. Please indicate by saying aye. Aye. The board having voted unanimously to approve the relief granted. Mr. Corcoran, congratulations on now going 2 out of 3. So we appreciate that. At this particular point in time, I must admit that the next hearing is scheduled pursuant to the public notice at 6:30 p.m. I am, given the time frame and the possibility that there may be members of the public who, in reliance on that, are waiting to join. While I would, just out of an abundance of caution and not wanting to mire the board in any potential violation of the open meeting law, I'm going to suggest to the board that we take a brief recess and we'll begin the preliminaries for the 6:30 hearing on the application of Bravo 2 LLC. Close to that particular point in time. So we've been pretty expeditious in our comments so far, and I don't want to get us mired in any technical violations. Does anyone have any objections to proceeding in that way?
I think it's the appropriate way to go, Mr. O'Brien. Thank you.
I concur.
I agree with that, Mr. O'Brien. Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to put a
You're muted, Mr. O'Brien.
I'm going to put myself on. I was too fast to the draw. I was saying I was going to put myself on mute. Stop the video for a moment. So we will begin the 6:30 hearing in a couple of minutes. Thank you for your patience. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Milton Board of Appeals. I'm going to call to order our hearing scheduled for this evening at 6:30. This hearing is being conducted pursuant to an executive order issued by the governor suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and subsequent legislation, affirming the continued extension of those provisions, allowing the Board of Appeals and certain other public bodies to conduct hearings remotely. This is being done via the Zoom platform. This evening's hearing is upon the application of Bravo MA, I presume that's Mass 2 LLC, dated January 6, 2020, for its property located at 1200 Brush Hill Road, on file with the Board of Appeals for amendments to the existing variance from the terms of Section 3A and Section 3B3 of the zoning bylaws of the town of Milton. The first request under Section 3A permitted uses seeks an amendment to an existing variance so as to allow the operation of an outpatient dialysis medical service center open to the general public. This would expand the uses granted in the original variance dated April 18th, 1990, which allowed the operation of a skilled nursing center on the site. The second request, this is pursuant to Section B3A, signs and billboards, seeks an amendment to an existing sign variance, which would allow one freestanding sign at its main Brush Hill Road entrance that is 60 inches wide and 38 inches tall, and one wall-hung banner sign that is 10 feet by 35 inches to be installed on the side of the building. The property, which again is located at 1200 Brush Hill Road, is located in a residential AA, that is AA district. All of this information is set there under the application and plans on file with the board and open to public inspection. My name is Frank O'Brien. I will be acting as chair for this hearing. Joining me this evening are my fellow board members, Nicholas Gray and Brian Hurley. To remind folks the way that we're going to conduct this hearing, I have just finished reading the meeting notice. I'm going to recite the contents of the file. Then we are going to hear from the applicant, who this evening is represented by Attorney Ned Cochran. Following Attorney Cochran's presentation and any witnesses that Attorney Cochran would like to present, the board will have an opportunity to ask questions and make comments. At that point in time, we will open it up to members of the public who wish to make any comments either for or against the pending application. If you do have questions or comments at that particular time, I'd ask that you address all of your questions and comments to the board. Also included in the file, as I mentioned, is the application filed by Attorney Cochran, a denial letter that was issued by the Milton building inspector, noting the zoning law issues and the need for a Board of Appeals process. Also included in the file is an addendum to the application for the request for a variance, which includes several attachments, including a plot plan land survey dated June 23rd, 2016, a lower level 4 plan titled Proposed Outpatient Medical Treatment Center, and photographs of a two-sided sign located at the main site driveway and a wall-mounted banner sign on the Brush Hill Road side of the existing building. Also included in those materials is a roughly a 2-page memo by Attorney Cochran noting the issues involved here, as well as several additional letters noting requests for continuances relative to the hearing of the application, which have been previously assented to, as well as a copy of the 1980 variance. Altogether, we have a 24-page package on this particular case. So with that and with the preliminaries, I welcome Attorney Cochran back to the Board of Appeals. Attorney Cochran, the floor is yours. Good evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Ned Corcoran on behalf of the applicant Bravo Mass 2 LLC, joined by the president and owner of the company, Gershon Klein. This is an interesting case. This is goes back to the early 1980s when the Board of Appeals granted a use variance to Tom Flatley to convert what was formerly a seminary, a Columban Fathers Seminary, to a 160-bed extended care facility at the bottom of the hill, if you will, on Brush Hill Road in Milton. Property sits below Fuller Village. Fuller Village is really the only direct abutter other than the state, which owns property across Brush Hill Road on the downhill side, and there's other sort of open space areas. The property was interesting reading through the form of variance. There was concern among some about the nature of the change from a seminary to an inpatient care, extended care facility, but had been supported fairly strongly by the select board and the planning board at the time that this was an appropriate use. I think the variance really, although technically you would say goes to conditions of the land, in this case, the variance I think was largely driven by the size and scale of the building in conjunction with the land. This is a massive structure. It's one of the largest structures in all of Milton. I think possibly the hospital, the high school, and a couple of other facilities. Structures are as large, but is a very large structure, 3 stories over a basement area. The current owner is, as I said, Bravo Mass 2 LLC. They purchased the property within the last 4 or 5 years. It had been operated for some period of time by the entity that Mr. Flatley had secured permission for, and then it was sold to GE Capital for a period of time. They really didn't run it very effectively, and then it's been purchased more recently by Mr. Klein and his company, and he is seeking to reinvest and bring it back to really a solid state. One of the things that he is able to do under his licensure with these rehab facility services is that they can provide inpatient medical care, certain types of medical care, including dialysis, certain types of limited cancer treatment on a inpatient basis, and they're building out the basement of the building to facilitate that. And what they see is a need within the town of Milton for outpatient services of a similar kind. We did meet with Deborah Felton at Fuller Village. It's the type of service that would be taken advantage of by some of the folks who live at Fuller Village who might need dialysis treatment on a somewhat regular basis. There are a number of other senior housing facilities in town. If you think of Winter Valley, Equity House, Home Inc., again, an old aging population that needs to take advantage of this. And there are no other locations within the town of Milton where that service can be provided. Folks have to leave the town to get that service. So in particular, we met with Deborah, who's the executive director of Fuller Village, to understand A, whether this would be a service that she would find beneficial, B, whether there would be any issues or concerns that she would have on behalf of the facility and her residents, particularly as a direct abutter. Ms. Felton was somewhat in favor, was fairly strongly in favor. She did have 2 requests which we agreed to honor and present to the board. And that would be that one, that any traffic leaving the facility would be directed to take a right-hand turn. If they're coming out onto Brush Hill Road, you take a right-hand turn towards Hyde Park rather than left up the hill towards Fuller Village. That's an easy one to accommodate. And the second would be that any outpatient services to be provided would cease at 8:00 p.m. So that wouldn't be, I think, in-house patients within the facility could use the facility in the evening, but for anyone coming in during the day, they would have to come in during the day and they would have to leave the facility by 8:00. I think a little bit to address concerns about additional traffic that might come through. Our anticipation is that this would be a very, very low traffic generator. The facility itself is a very low traffic generator. The variance that was granted in 1980, 81 converted the use from a tax exempt, zoning exempt use as a religious use. It became taxable and it's become a highly valuable taxpayer within the town. And this is a service that would contribute additional value, both from the nature of the service perspective, but also from a taxable perspective. We don't see that any issues or concerns with any impacts that would come. I think it's a fairly high, this would be a high value add to what is, we think, a high value, low impact, albeit a large use in a section of town, but in a section of town that is not within a neighborhood, is not surrounded by other residential properties, and is sort of, although somewhat remote from other parts of town, is still more convenient in terms of access for those living in the town. The second piece of the variance request deals with signage. The original variance did require some signage to be installed, so from a directional perspective, so that the people who were looking for the facility, they could find it. One of those signs needs to be replaced, and it's actually larger than what was originally installed. And then separately, they've got a large banner sign that hangs on the side of the building that faces to Brush Hill Road. It does not face towards the Fuller Village side. It doesn't face any other residential, any other area. It's visible only from Brush Hill Road, but it does help from a directional perspective. If you're coming to this area looking to come here as a visitor, or coming here for the services that it provides, that it would provide adequate notice and direction to the facility. Our bylaw does not allow, I think you know, our bylaw does not authorize commercial signs in residential zones. That's probably something that needs to be corrected within the issue of the bylaw itself, but until that happens, signs can only be allowed pursuant to variances that would be granted, along with the use that's allowed. So with that, let me pause and open up to the board and to the public for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Corcoran. Mr. Hurley, do you have any questions, or Mr. Gray, any questions at this point in time?
Mr. Corcoran, can you tell me what's the current use of that building?
The current use is in-house nursing care, rehabilitative nursing care. There are 160 beds within that facility. It's been used in that form since the variance was granted in 1981.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Corcoran, can you fix this one? There we go. My question has to do with the large banner sign that's hanging on the side of the building. Okay. I understand the need for the smaller sign to help people find the places they're driving by, right? Can you explain to me how a 350 square foot sign hanging off the side of the building is worthy of a variance under the standard that we have to follow for statutory, for granting of a variance? I mean, I'm curious how that fits in a residential zone that we can grant a variance for a sign that large.
I think well, the way to think about it is that if this were a sign on a building in a business zone, it would fit the dimensional limitations within the business zone because the scale of the building is so great that it doesn't trip over the maximum percentage of area that a sign can be. I agree. It's a large sign. I think it provides some degree of, hey, here's who we are. This is what we do. It's visible. The building is set back somewhat from Brush Hill Road itself. So I think it provides some level of visibility. And in that regard, I think it skates up to the edge and maybe steps just over. You're still muted, Nick.
Oh, I tried to unmute myself. I'm sorry. Is the sign lit at night?
No.
I had another question and it slipped out of my head. It had to do with the sign though.
Just it's a large banner really that hangs off and that sort of corner alcove. It is a sort of a nook alcove.
Okay.
It's not, plastered.
It's there now?
It's there.
Okay. I don't know. If I recover the question I was going to ask, I'll step in, but I'll stop now and reserve my question if I can think of it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Mr. Corcoran, if you and fellow board members, if you don't mind, I've got a couple of questions. So, Mr. Corcoran, the current use of the structure is a 160-bed skilled nursing facility. Has the census of the facility consistently been 160 patients over the past several years?
I think it's up. It comes up and down a little bit. I think during the COVID period, the census was down a little bit, and they over the last several years. Mr. Klein and his team have invested significantly into the building itself. So at times, wings have been sort of closed off for reinvestment, redevelopment. And so given that volume of work over the last several years, it has not been full at 160 beds consistently. I think the goal is to get it back up and running to that degree. And to provide this additional service, which is a service they perceive is a service that would be beneficial to the folks of Milton.
So it hasn't been fully populated for some period of time for any number of reasons. So presumably there are 160 folks who are potentially patients there. How many staff are in the building?
That's a good question. Gershon, are you able to answer that question?
Yes, there's around 150 staff members that work in the building, give or take.
So it's 24/7, obviously, with a residential facility.
Right, so it's right, exactly, not at the same time, but there's 150 staff members around the clock, yes.
And it's my understanding that the proposed renovations, the changes would put in place maybe you have this number directly in front of you. Fortunately, I have it on my screen and I have to rotate the document several times in order to.
I think it's 24 stations. Individual stations that would be used.
Do you anticipate an increase in traffic, comings and goings?
I think you'll see, over the course of the day, you might have 5 or 6, 8, 10 people coming in. They come in for 3 or 4 hours at a time. It's not a quick in and out situation. It takes several hours to go through a dialysis I guess operation, not quite the right word, but someone's receiving dialysis treatment. It takes several hours to do it. So you'll have folks scheduled to come in, and I would think you would see, maybe as many as 10 over the course of the day, maybe 4 or 5 in the morning, 4 or 5 in the afternoon. I'm not sure the demand for outpatient dialysis treatment is that significant. A fair number of these units will be used by folks who will be inpatient and available to use at 24 hours.
Well, I'm trying to get a better sense on what, if any, potential traffic issues may arise here. You've got 160 beds. I mean, presumably those folks aren't going anywhere. You've got 24 spaces where folks will be undergoing dialysis. I fortunately am not familiar with how long dialysis takes and whatnot, so I'm not sure what the turnover is. So maybe Mr. Gershon or what have you could elucidate me as to what your view is concerning the potential increase, if any, in traffic coming and going from the facility. Noting the comment that you provided in your presentation from the director of Fuller Village asking for or requesting that outpatient visits not take place after 8 p.m.
Hi, this is Gershon. So typically it takes around 4 hours to dialyze a person, which means they come in the morning, they stay on the machine for 4 hours, and then they go back home. So it doesn't really make a difference if it's an in-house, someone that's an inpatient, it'll be 4 hours, or someone that's coming from outside the facility. Typically a patient comes 3 times a week, so it's the same patient that comes 3 times per week to get dialyzed. And that's generally what winds up happening. So I hope that answers your question. Sometimes they come with public transportation, sometimes they come with an ambulance, sometimes they come with an ambulette, and sometimes they'll drive themselves. It all depends on the condition of the person. Sometimes a family member will drive them. It all depends on the health and the condition of the person. Obviously, they're weaker when they're done dialyzing. So that typically they'll get some type of assistance to go home as well.
Thank you.
So I think, so my sense, Mr. O'Brien, is that the volume of trips coming in and out is going to be extremely limited. I think, as I said, maybe 10 in and out over the course of a day. That's my sense, our understanding of a former traffic guy at Mass Highway. That's a blip. 10 over the course of the day, that's 1 per hour. Maybe you have 3 or 4 that come in between 9 and 10. You have another 2 or 3 that come in between 10 and 11. And then when they leave, there might be a couple of folks leaving and a couple of folks coming in and then leaving in the afternoon. And that is very, very minor traffic impact.
What are the proposed hours of operation for this dialysis facility?
So the hours of operation would be sort of 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning until 8 o'clock at night for outpatient service. Inpatient service, they could do it they can do it at night, whatever is comfortable and appropriate for the respective occupant. If it works for somebody to do it in the evening, they can set it up and do it in the evening. They just come down the stairs or go down the elevator and in and out. Separate question, obviously, when would people be allowed to come to the facility from outside of the facility? And there was a concern that, as I said, that Deborah Felton had, that it ought to be done by 8 o'clock at night. I agreed that that was appropriate. 3 years from now, business is booming, quote unquote, and if there's been no impact, and it makes sense to expand those hours, we'd have to come back to the board for permission to expand those hours. But I think for the time being, hours of operation between 7 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock at night is appropriate.
I think Ned, it needs to start at 6 a.m. actually, because the first shift would start at 6 and it's generally done by 4. It just gave a little extra time, but 6 a.m.
Okay.
So with normal business operations being 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. and with dialyzation, if that's a word, at 4 hours, you're basically able to, if my math is correct, you're able to turn these pods over, if you will, 2 to 3 times a day, potentially 72 people coming, 72 additional trips coming in and out of the facility.
Well, technically, you could do it 3 times a day. Yes.
Has the applicant in their preparation and research of this provided any estimation of what your marketing and what have you would result in terms of the utilization of the facility?
We still have to go through a full need application with the state. And so we sort of didn't know which one to tackle first. And that's how we're coming to this town of Milton first.
So you have to go through a determination of need process at the state in order to open the facility as well?
Correct.
All right. Mr. Cochran, moving to the sign for a moment. I joined my colleague, Mr. Gray, in expressing some concerns about that sign. As you well know, they are disfavored. And while I give you credit for making a very good argument, it's not located in the business district. It's in a AA residential district. I find it hard to overcome that hurdle.
I'm not sure I have any additional arguments to hand back to the board, so
I also note that if you did wish to pursue something on this, that I would suggest that, as you well know, that your outlet is to the Board of Selectmen as opposed to the Board of Appeals.
I know that ordinarily under the town's sign bylaw that the select board is the entity that approves, but Mr. Grondak has taken the position that in a non-business zone, the sign bylaw doesn't apply, and therefore he looks to the Board of Appeals in these cases to approve signs with variances as part of the very occasional use variance for commercial purposes that arise in town. You've got the pre-existing non-conforming commercial uses in a handful of places around town, and every once in a while they look to change the use, and if they do that, they need to get their signs approved as well. I think the last time I had one of those cases was the dental service at the corner of Randolph and Reedsdale Road, where the use was changed from where the 7-Eleven is located, and on the other side of the building there was I think Tom O'Neill's real estate office, and it was converted under an amendment to variance to allow, or by variance because it was a new use. It was allowed as a dental office, and they were allowed signage as part of the application. We did not go separately to the board.
I recall that. I believe I sat on that case. So
I did too. I think it was Frame It, wasn't it? The Frame It business?
It was
Yes.
Frame It, and then it became the dental office.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That,
Actually, I think Tom O'Neill was going to do it. I'm not sure he did it, and then became a Frame It.
is the dental office. I would hasten to distinguish that particular case from this one. Those signs were relatively modest business signage. As Mr. Gray, I think, correctly points out, this is quite a different scale, and at least based on the picture, this one is more like a billboard in my mind. So
that was, I remembered my question, Mr. O'Brien, if I could just, it's right, it's on this topic, which is, if it's okay to ask it,
please.
was whether the sign review committee has any input into this, or is that only for business district?
I think
just
it's only for
remember.
business district.
Yeah. So basically, we're it in your view. Okay. That helps a lot. Thanks.
Thank you. I don't have any additional questions. Mr. Hurley, do you have any additional questions? Brian, you're still on mute. I don't know if you have any questions or not.
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cochran, do you have anything you wish to add before I open it up to the public at this point?
No, I thank you for your questions, and I'll see if there's anything additional.
Thank you. At this point in time, Ms. Rich, are there any members of the public who have indicated a desire to be heard on this application?
No, there's not.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no additional persons who wish to be heard on this particular application, Mr. Cochran, if you're all done, I think we'll move from the evidentiary portion of this hearing to the deliberation portion. So just
Thank
double
you.
checking anything if you'd like to say at this point.
I just like, if we were going in order of need here, I would certainly argue strongly in favor of the need for the outpatient service and for approval by the board for that purpose. I understand the board's concerns about this particular sign, and would understand if the board were entertaining we're in a difficult time in entertaining the ability to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Corcoran. So given that final statement, I'm going to call the evidentiary portion of this hearing to a close and move to the deliberation portion of the hearing. And Mr. Hurley, would you like to begin?
Sure. Just to go first to the signs, I would be disposed not to grant the requested variance for the signs. I think it's not the appropriate thing to have in the residential district, and you know, a dialysis facility. I don't think people are driving by and saying, "Geez, let's go in there and get a dialysis done." I mean, I don't think signage really has much to do with the business. So I'd be inclined not to grant that. With respect to the use itself, I would be inclined to vote in favor of the grant of the relief. I think it is a benefit to the community with seemingly minimal impact on the neighborhood, as evidenced by the fact that we've had no opposition to the proposal, and so I would be inclined to vote in favor with the clear condition that there would be no left-hand turns out of the facility, because if you travel that road at rush hour, it has become a major cut through from Hyde Park, and it's very difficult to navigate during peak hours on that road. And so the last thing it needs is to have left-hand turns going into the queue on the road at certain times of the day. So I think that the prohibition on left-hand turns coming out of the facility is something that we would want to have as a condition. So I'd be in favor of voting in favor of the facility itself, imposing the limited access condition that Mr. Corcoran alluded to, and otherwise I would be inclined to vote against the variance request with respect to signage.
But I know that the evidence question.
Brian, if you could toggle your go mute.
Distinguishing between the large sign on the side of the building.
Ned, I'm sorry. Couldn't hear what you had to say. There was
Yeah,
so much
I
feedback
was just,
coming from
I was just,
Brian.
with respect to the signs, there are two signs. There's a freestanding sign that is at the entrance to the driveway, which we think is necessary. The larger sign on the side of the building, I think, you know, I heard concern about that one. And so I would just ask if the board, thinking about eliminating that large wall sign, but it is necessary. The earlier variance did require some signage at entrances to driveways. It'd be helpful to have a sign at that entrance to the driveway so people are clear that that's the driveway they're entering into to come to the facility.
I would have no objection to the driveway sign.
Thank you. Mr. Gray.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I too think that the variance regarding the dialysis center makes a lot of sense in that building. I think it's based on the testimony and the nature of that particular treatment. It's not likely to cause a major impact to the traffic of the area. It's already pretty busy. I think it's that usage is consistent with the other activities that are going on in that building. And I do note that I think it's important that the access to dialysis is provided, for the residents of the town nearby. That's something that you're going to need. You don't have much choice in getting it. And if this facility can facilitate the availability of that treatment and service to the residents of the town and other people, I think that's all of the good. So I'd be in favor of granting the first variance. As to the second one, I've already stated kind of my feelings about it. The large banner sign I can't vote for, but I think variance 2, insofar as it discusses the driveway sign, as long as the driveway sign is consistent with Mr. Corcoran, is the sign or that driveway sign already there, or is that?
Yes.
Okay, so that's why it says maintain, not approve and maintain. Yeah, got it. All right, so so I'm fine with the driveway sign. I just think the banner sign, I can't vote for the variance for that. And I would support the variance for the variance 1 for the use.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. I agree with my colleagues for similar reasons and in a similar fashion. Going back to the earlier conversation during the evidence portion of this, we noted the signage on the dental office at a major intersection in town. Across the street from that dental office is a facility that was much needed in the town, which has served the town well, and which was a little bit of a higher intensity use than what was there, including some additional traffic. Looking at this particular application, I agree with my colleagues that the installation of this type of treatment facility in this building would be a benefit of the town, weighing that benefit with a relatively modest increase in traffic, given the location and the unique configuration of this particular locus, I think is a balance that's well worth going forward in favor of granting the variance for the dialysis facility. I join with my colleagues, however, in drawing the line at the banner sign. I can't support that. I do agree, however, that maintenance of the existing sign relative to the driveway, the smaller sign, if you will, is appropriate and is also, I believe, within the confines of the spirit of the sign bylaw. I would also agree with the comments made by Mr. Hurley relative to the no left turn condition and the no outpatient services after 8 p.m. I think that those are reasonable, and I commend the applicant for proactively reaching out to Fuller Village and having a substantive discussion regarding that, and I believe coming to a very reasonable conclusion. So on behalf of the board, I thank the applicant for doing that. So with that having said, I'd be in a position of supporting this with those changes. So in sum, supporting the variance for the dialysis center with no left turn condition plus a no outpatient services after 8 p.m. Supporting the maintenance of the existing, if you will, driveway, i.e. the smaller sign. However, not in favor of the larger banner side, and would urge the applicant to pursue its removal at their earliest convenience. With that, having laid that out, I think I'll put that in the form of a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of granting the variance as stated in the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Unanimous. Mr. Cochran, Mr. Gershon, congratulations on your variance. I'll be writing this particular one. It would be at this point where the chair would normally recite the appeal period and don't do anything so that you're on the hook for having potentially to reverse it. But Mr. Cochran is well-versed and experienced practitioner, and I know that he will advise his client appropriately, so I don't need to go through that recitation. Mr. Cochran, any questions? Are you clear on the board's decision?
Yes, I'm very clear. I appreciate your time and enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thank you, Mr. Corcoran. And
Thank you very much, board.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the time and attention this evening. And that will bring the business of the Milton Board of Appeals to its conclusion this evening. So that will be the end of the hearing. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your evening.
Good night. Thank you.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.